there's a little bit of an explanation in the notes. Troxel versus Granville is known as a grandparent visitation case. It's a Supreme Court case that came out of the state of Washington. And as a sole legal custodian mother, I love the case because it backs me up too. It says I can't be dragged back into court for 7 years, but because or without some understanding that doing so causes me to not be able to be a proper parent when I'm in court every other month. On the other hand, Troxel is about a grandparents who had regular visitations with their grandchildren until their child passed away, who was the father of the children, and then the mother eventually remarried. And when she remarried, they wanted to diminish visitations of Grandma and Grandpa. Grandma and Grandpa weren't having it, so they sued. And they sued and they sued and they sued. So Troxel is this compromise decision that says, yes, grandparents can have visitation, but you understand it's not a constitutional right. Grandparent, when we say rights, it's not the fundamental right that parents have. So you have first the fundamental right of the parent, then there's some reference to the kids, because they're essentially property. And then you have what essentially sounds like a license. If you're a grandparent, you kind of have a license. So in Troxel, the Supreme Court said if the grandparents are making reasonable visitation requests and those are being denied, then there's perhaps some wiggle room in whether to fine them for the fees of the parents. But otherwise, grandparents have rights that can be pursued in court for visitation of their grandchildren, but they also have to expect to pay for the costs of that litigation because it can be so overly burdensome. The exact language, like I said, is on the note section of my Facebook note. But out of Troxel came our grandparent visitation statutes, and we find those in our Kansas statutes 23-3304 and 3301. Those are your third-party visitation statutes.
So can you say that again?
It's 23-3301 through 3304. I can tell you that I've successfully litigated as a step-parent under those same statutes, and no one ever paid me my fees. So don't let that be a deterrent, but don't make it your first line of defense. The PFA is your line of defense. You need to have those kids in your residence at some point if you want to protect their interests. So Troxel, it does, and I agree with it. You can't have somebody in and out of court every other month and expect them to be able to parent. But at the same time, you have to strike a balance. If the grandparent is saying, hey, I'll take 1 weekend a month, and the parents are still saying, yeah, you know what, no, we don't like you anymore, and you're a little mouthy grandma, and the kids come back and they start talking about all their rights and how I can't beat them with a stick, and and so grandma's not going to see the kids anymore. That's not going to be looked upon very favorably in a courtroom. And I find that difficult to believe that a judge would assess you with fees in those situations, but I will tell you that in the state of Kansas, there are phenomenal judges and there are a few that should not be judges. And I can't tell you definitively who all of them are, but I will tell you that I'm visiting. And I would let you know if I have a definitive decision. Yes?
The question that I have regarding Troxel v. Granville, you mentioned that there's a lot of change going on right now. I've read some of the opinions. It was certainly by no means a unanimous decision.
Correct.
Should that be challenged? And what's your opinion on that? I think part of Troxel v. Granville is horrendous.
I think you need to look at Troxel like this. There's some good nuggets in there. If you stop thinking about the state of Kansas being your partner, or if you stop being dependent on the state of Kansas to get your grandchildren or to protect your children, then you're on to something. Because then that's really what Troxel is about. Leave family matters to the family. It's because DCF comes in and takes kids without giving consideration to the grandparents first that we are in this mess, number one. There are plenty, I'm sure, and I know that some grandparents are not capable, but I cannot imagine in any circumstance, but maybe 5 to 10% of the time, would DCF or law enforcement go to a grandparent and say, hey, we're gonna, there's a situation, do you want your grandkids? Well, grandparents going to say no, otherwise they're going to go to foster care. Who's going to do that? Really? There's going to be a few who can't because they're infirm or they don't have living quarters. But the majority of the time you're going to find grandparents, and then understand, then they can go to kinship. All of that is supposed to have priority before the state, and I'm not seeing that happening. I've only had, my collection of 50 or so that I have enough knowledge to talk about. 50 is not a large sample size, but it's worth questioning. So Troxel, I don't think should be challenged. I think you need to stop thinking about the police and DCF and the courts as your saviors. You don't need heroes. You just need to go get your grandkids. And you need to keep this stuff within the family. If your kid has a drug problem, it's your responsibility as a grandparent to do something about it. So I've given you tools to think about how you don't have to involve the state in your family business. And that's the foundation of my law firm right now, is that we're providing family preservation services. And understand, that's what KVC and St. Francis provide, right? But we provide them privately, and we intend on taking that part of that market away from the contractors and putting it back with you all. We hope we can do it, because the federal laws have changed. So there's not going to be as much funding without family preservation. So grandparents are going to have to be talked to now. That's what you guys should focus on rather than challenging Troxel.
Okay.
Troxel actually benefits you, saying that keep family stuff in the family. So if you got a kid being abused by a stepfather, do something about it. Have a family intervention. Tell the police you're going to go. They can't intervene unless they're going to help the kid. Do you see what I'm saying? This is about family and restoring the power of the family in this country. And stop being reliant upon other heroes. You guys are the heroes. You're the ones who's going to change this.